All right, I got it. I'm done. All right, let's take a look at this problem. You know, when something goes into circular motion, we always have to pause for a split second and just make sure our brains are in the game for what a free body diagram would look like for this, because I'm telling you, the free body diagram really is the key to bringing this thing home. So if we've got a dude coming down a roller coaster, we know this dude's going to be inside here. More importantly, we know that this roller coaster track has to push on the person, or this person ends up going off into space. All right, that person will end up getting ejected, and we don't want that when we're riding roller coasters. So I'm going to do my free body diagram as a circle here at point A, just like the question asks me. All right, so I don't know. Calvin, give me one force that we know for certain is acting on this person.
Mass times gravity.
Mass times gravity. We know that there's an mg that has to act on this person. Oh, man, I don't know why mine won't go straight, but that should be acting straight down. Ooh, I almost had it. Ooh, I'm actually using PowerPoint and not Cami right now. So here's what we need to entertain, I guess. Here's what we need to entertain. There, I've got this. We've got the force of gravity right here. All right? So there must be another force acting on this. So what must that force be? What must that force be? Talk to me. I bet you, Cole, I bet you know another force that's acting on this.
Normal force.
You know what? I like how you said that. It is the normal force. So basically what we're saying is that this wall has to push. There has to be this push factor that comes from the wall. So let me move my point A out of the way, and let's kind of visualize what this might look like. And I hope this isn't too small for you guys. No, it's not too small. You guys can probably see this. You can call it force of the wall pushing on this, but let's call this force normal, because that's what the problem wanted us to call it, is this right here. So we have this natural force of gravity that's occurring right here, that's wanting to pull it down, okay? So we're left with this idea of how these two forces can interact with one another. All right, we're left with this idea. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, Matthew, I just don't understand what I should do with the length of this vector, because that doesn't make sense to me. Well, here's what I want you to consider. I want you to consider the fact that this ball, while it's rolling, its inertia keeps wanting it to go like tangential to the path that it's finding itself in. Because this ball wants to go this way, the molecules in the ball are pushing on the track. So the track is naturally wanting to push back at the same time. So now let's look at it a little bit differently, I guess. What happens if there is absolutely no normal force for this ball rolling around the track? Like Ben, what do you think that would look like, no normal force going around the track?
Would it just fall in the middle?
It would. It would just simply fall. Okay? So let's pretend for a moment that I put a bathroom scale in here. So I am going to put a little itty bitty, little tiny bathroom scale. And my bathroom scale is capable of measuring the apparent weight of the ball. See, we could get the apparent weight of the ball right there. We could get the apparent weight of the ball down here. And what we're saying when we're saying apparent weight is we're saying this has to factor in to our net force equation up above. And so here's what I mean by that. If we look at the F net, that was a cool sound. If we look at our F net force for what it is, then what we're saying is we know that mg is acting downward, and we know that the normal force is a co-player in that experience. And we know that we've got this idea of mv squared over r, so that the radius of the circle isn't something that inevitably the universe just simply chooses to ignore, because it doesn't choose to ignore it. All right? So then we think of what this equation might mean if we start analyzing what the vectors are capable of doing. We're saying that the centripetal force, or the inevitable net force that acts towards the center of the circle, is not just going to be a function of velocity. It has to account for the way mg and n interact with one another. Matthew, out with it. What are you talking about? All right, well, let's rearrange these guys. Let's rearrange these. I find this helpful. And I find it helpful to go through it as slow as I'm going through it. It seems like I'm going through it at the speed of super duper slow. But I'm thinking it's going to make sense really, really soon. I hope. Okay. Look what I've done now. What I've done now is I have chosen to analyze the limiting factor. The limiting factor for how this thing is going to go over here is the normal force. The limiting factor is the normal force. So I move it over to this side, and now it's a negative. All right? So if I want to know what the normal force feels like, I need to account for mv squared over r minus what gravity is capable of doing. So whatever velocity I'm going at times my mass divided by r is going to give me one number here. And then, of course, my weight stays the same. But that means I am allowed to change my normal force. So let me just, for example, put in a suggestion for what this could look like. Let's say this is 10 plus 10, and it equals 20. So our mg was 10, and then our normal force was 10. And then our mv squared over r, we're going to set that equal to 20. All right? Well, if we were, now bear in mind, the mg is a number that can't change. The 20 is a number that can change because we can change our velocity. So the mere fact of changing our velocity gives us the opportunity to change the normal force. And here's what I mean. Let's say that we just started going slower for no good reason. If we started going slower, look what happens. If we start going slower, then our normal force will actually change. This will register a different number. Well, what would that number be? Well, that number would be 15 minus 10, which is 5. So our apparent weight would go down. The faster we go, the more this wall has to step up and deal with us. right? So when Fn equals mg at the top, that's no big deal. When Fn equals mg at the top, that's not a limiting factor. But what happens is, as the normal force continually shrinks due to this relationship, we run the risk of not being able to complete the loop. So that is what the big deal is. And I think we're set on that. So, and as soon as your normal force reaches zero, you cannot complete the loop. All right. So I just want to make sure we understand kind of what a limiting factor looks like. Anybody got a question on that? That kind of makes sense. I'm hoping that kind of makes sense because we're talking about limiting factors then. All right. Looking to see. All right. Do me a favor. I'd like everybody to go into the week 17 folder. I've got a little tiny surprise for you. Good. Pre, you made it in. Good job. So let's get out of this and let's go to something that I've discovered. I have discovered that there is a little bit of a discrepancy with how people draw free body diagrams. And so, go into Schoology for me. I have something for us.